well, welcome to this special session that I'm delighted to be a part of. We have a sponsor talk from IntelliBoard with Tonya Riney, who is a PhD and the COO and Chief Intellivangelist at IntelliBoard. And she's going to talk about a really critical and interesting concept, storytelling, and how to use data in ways that can help you. So something that's always an interest of mine, and I'm looking forward to hearing about it. So it's storytelling with data, use your evidence and use it effectively. And Tonya, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to go ahead and reshare your screen, and then it's all yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, if that's where you might be located. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Storytelling is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about, especially when it comes to data. So let's just jump into the deep end of the pool and away we go. There. So we're going to talk about using your evidence and using it wisely. So let's kind of cover our agenda for today. We're going to talk about positioning to your audience and identifying the big idea. This is huge. We'll talk about the ethics of data presentations, displaying data, and of course, storytelling in action. Oh, by the way, check out that arrow. We're going to revisit that arrow again. So positioning, right? The better you understand your audience, the better your story will be. And we do not give enough attention to this very, very simple concept. And we dive right into our presentation from our own perspectives instead of focusing on where our audience might actually be. So imagine for a second that you're a fourth grade science teacher, right? Who just wrapped up an experimental pilot summer learning program on science. And you survey the participating kids at the onset and at the end of the program to determine their attitudes and how they may have changed on the topic of science. And you believe the data shows a great success story. And you want, obviously, to continue the program. You're super excited. So you fill your presentation with slide after slide of charts and graphs, and everyone dies internally, and you are arrested for killing your audience. No, it's probably not going to be solid for you. It's not going to work. We need to talk about your end game. As the fourth grade science teacher, if you're headed into this presentation thinking you want to tell folks about it, don't bother. It's a huge waste of your time, and it's a huge, even probably bigger waste of your audience's time. If you are involved in communication, it falls into one of two buckets: informing or persuading. And 99% of the time, it's persuading. You need to fully understand what your end game is before you even begin. This controls your message and the data that you'll use to add credibility to that message. So let's cover our who, what, and how, right? We need to take 5 minutes to be able to deal with the who, the what, and the how to build our presentation effectively. So let's tackle who. Who might our audience actually be? The parents of the students who participated in the program, the parents of prospective students, maybe, other teachers who might be doing a similar program or would like to, or maybe it's the budget committee who controls the funding for the program. Each of these audiences and the angle that you're going to take for this presentation is totally different, totally different. So now we have to talk about what, right? So we've got the parents of the students who participated, right? It was totally worthwhile. That's your message. You're persuading them it's totally worthwhile. Parents of successful students. It is clearly your pathway to successful parenting. Do this summer science program. What about other teachers? You should totally do it. What about the budget committee? Give me more money, right? These are very, very, very different messages, and we want to make sure that our message, that our presentation is geared to whoever or whichever the audience that actually might be. Simply choosing to inform them of anything about your program is not the right angle, and it's not going to be effective. It's not going to get you where you want to go. So what data will help me make my argument, right? How do I best position that data effectively? And we're going to cover the how of data with more detail as we move through. This is one of my favorite quotes, friends. I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. That's from Blaise Pascal. Conciseness, it's a beautiful thing, and it's significantly harder. If you only had 3 minutes to present, how would you encapsulate what you had to say? We all know that our attention spans are challenged, right? Even now, I'm worried about the dozens of notifications that you are getting, and I have to compete for your attention, right? So can I boil down what I want to say into a 3-minute kind of overview of what I want to share with you? I hope so. So let's talk about the big idea. Nancy Duarte discusses the concept of the big idea in her book, Resonate. And the big idea must include 3 components. It must articulate your unique point of view. It must convey what's at stake. And the audience is very important to consider here. What's at stake obviously differs depending on the audience, right? We've got parents who want to win the Perfect Parent Award, and we also have teachers who want to deliver the program. Totally different things at stake. And the big idea needs to be a complete sentence. So let's try this one. The pilot summer learning program was successful at improving students' perceptions of science. And because of this success, we recommend continuing to offer it going forward. Please approve our budget for this program, right? So you might challenge me if that's a run-on sentence, and that may or may not be fair, but it definitely encapsulates the entire presentation in 4 lines, and that's what we want, so we can be very focused about what we're hoping to accomplish in this. All right, we got to talk about ethics, friends. We got to talk about ethics. It's a big deal. And I'm sorry to share this with you, but we need to talk about more reasons to avoid water. I mean, this is clearly a national, in fact, global crisis. Water can be extracted from rocket fuel. It is the main ingredient in pesticides. 100% of violent criminals have consumed water in the hours leading up to their crimes. No, water is the #1 cause of drowning. Excess consumption of water will cause sweating, urination, and possibly death. And 100% of people exposed to water will die. So let's talk about ethics. Message exaggeration and understatement occurs when the facts are not distorted, but the way the information is presented is altered to intentionally or unintentionally exaggerate the facts. It is an ethical violation. Other ethical violations of data include a truncated axis, area as quantity, and aspect ratio, which we're going to dive into right now. And by the way, friends, I'll have a solid list of all of the resources for this presentation. And if you'd like a copy of it, please email me, and I'm very happy to share it and engage in more conversation because I love this stuff. So let's talk about the truncated axis, right? We got the same data and a different y-axis. So if I look at the chart on the left, then clearly interest rates are horribly out of control, right, from 2008 to 2012. And that's the takeaway that I'm going to have unless I actually really investigate and critically consider what this actually means. And this kind of leads into the idea that we're consumers of data, right? And we do need to reflect on data very critically, because if we look at interest rates on the right-hand side, they're almost flatlined, right? Depending on the takeaway and what we actually need to get from the data that we're seeing here. So we need to be very, very cautious about what is happening. Area as quantity. This is not a good screenshot, but it is very accurate. It was real, right? It's clearly a broadcast. And we're looking at area as quantity in terms of people on welfare and people with a full-time job. And really, the differences in the overall numbers here are not substantial. They're not significant. And so area as quantity can be distorted as well. This is another great example of the a proportion of males and females with public insurance. And this is using improper area as quantity, right? The females look way out of distortion when it's only 4% higher than the males. And so this has been distorted. So let's talk about correlation and causation. So clearly, we've got two conclusions that we're going to draw here, right? Ice cream causes murders, or people who murder eat ice cream. Either one, and neither, of course, is accurate at all, because we need to make sure that we talk about the difference between correlating data and causation, actual causation. And most of the research that we are doing in e-learning is related to, Jack, don't come over here, please, is related to the, sorry about that, friends, is related to this idea of causation where we can't, there isn't a causation, right? We can guide correlations, but not causations. So we want to make very sure that there is another correlation, right? The summer is the correlation, the summer, and or hot weather or temperatures or whatever. Another great one is that RAM 2500s cause DUIs. So RAM 2500s then are the cause of DUIs. And you can see this on the chart, except that it's a correlating kind of a thing. It's not a causation. So this is a serious accusation. We have to be very careful and ethically concerned about whether or not we actually are doing this. I got to admit, when I saw this example, I was pretty surprised because I looked at those pie charts and I did not see a significant aspect ratio difference in any one of the top three of those. And it wasn't until I saw the corresponding bar chart below it, and they're clearly different. And so I was pretty surprised, and I have no doubt that people are using aspect ratio to influence me and influence the way that I view data and how I'm interpreting data. So it helped me to become clearly more critical about the kinds of things that I'm viewing, which is great. So let's talk about data, right? We got to do data. We have to talk about data in terms of storytelling. So I can kill you, of course, by just sort of overloading all of these different kinds of things as we go through, right? And it can be just chart after chart after chart after chart. And this is not helpful, and you're not going to like it, and it's not going to be fun, and this is not how we should do it, right? So let's not kill you by overloading you with meaningless data, and let's kind of focus. Right? So here's something, right? It's an IntelliBoard graph, and it shows the most visited courses inside of your learning management system, right? And this is common formatting for this type of data on the slide, except I don't think you can really easily see it. And what are you supposed to take from this? And we can do better. So let's do better, right? Okay, I made it bigger. You can probably see it. Right? We're zooming in on it. You can read the details. We can do better still, right? So I zoomed in again because I want to focus where I want you to look. Now let's go deeper. I want us to look at the amount of activity for Psychology 101, or rather 1.0. It's huge. This is crazy, right? This is a lot of activity in Psych 101, Psych 1. And we need to understand what's happening in there, right? You can look critically at this. I want to focus your attention, and I want you to see that there is a significant difference between what is happening between Psychology 1.0 and French 2, HR certification, and also the leadership principles class, which is it's absolutely abysmal. This is bad, right? How could we then potentially duplicate that success elsewhere with Psych 1.0? And do the other courses need an intervention? This is the way to take data and guide people to focus on it. So let's talk about telling the story. Here's a report. It is a report about Perry Mack. Perry Mack is a student. But again, this is an overwhelming piece of information. Where do I want you to go? Where do I want you to look? Okay, well, let's kind of do that, right? I want you to look at Perry's grades first. They ain't great. And now I want you to look at Perry's scores because they ain't great. And now let's take a look at the amount of visits that Perry's had. Okay, well, this is interesting. I mean, he has a C+ and a C- with a lot of visitation in the class, right? But nothing else. And then we've also got a considerable discrepancy in the time spent, right? He's never been in the courses where he's not performing. And clearly we need to do an intervention for Perry. So we can also focus attention and data on where using arrows or animations to be able to guide you when something like this image is being displayed, okay? So let's kind of do a really quick run through of storytelling in practice, right? We want to talk about data. So we can talk about data by talking about a day in the life at University College with IntelliBoard. And we can talk about Maddie. Maddie is a student services counselor at University College, and Maddie receives an automated IntelliBoard course and activity report each week. And we can see that Maddie is concerned about the performance of multiple students in some of the courses on her report. And Maddie is particularly interested in Perry Mack's performance. And as we've already suggested, this is not a shocker, right? Maddie can quickly access Perry's visits and his total time and do all of the things that might be necessary to be able to scoop Perry up and work with him from a retention standpoint, right? Maddie can filter for Perry's performance in all of his courses, like we saw previously, and she could even email him directly from IntelliBoard if she wants. But Maddie needs to go further, right? Maddie notifies University College's instructors about all of the students at risk, not just Perry. And University College, of course, employs dedicated instructors committed to student success. And after hearing from Maddie, they viewed their instructor dashboards. And instructors can view overall learner performance, correlations, learner engagement, and event utilization, right? Are students engaged? Are students not engaged? We need to know all this stuff. Using the IntelliBoard instructor dashboard, instructors can access the performance metrics of all of their learners and zero in on specific learners and their grades. Meanwhile, in another department of campus, this is Dr. Yu, the VP of Instruction at University College. Dr. Yu has pulled the Learner Success and Progress report so that she can filter for at-risk students as defined by University College, right? So she can make a decision as to what it means to be at risk, and she can move forward, creating interventions across the campus. Here's our epilogue. All of University College's students perform magnificently, and everyone at the college gets 100% raise, right? Woo, woo, woo. This is delightful. So let's take a minute and kind of get an overview of the kinds of things that you might actually be able to get data-wise from IntelliBoard. So we're going to jump into, and this is one of the items that I mentioned, the Learner Success and Progress Report. And we can see a lot of really cool stuff that's happening in here. We can see progress, we can see the score, we can see visits, time spent is one of my favorite things. And whether or not, I guess visits and time spent actually are two of my favorite things, because this is such an indicator of students who are engaged or not engaged in the course. Inactive users in the course is obviously strongly important. Doesn't matter if you're in a corporate environment, higher ed, K-12, we need to know who the inactive users are. And this particular report is showing inactive users in the last 90 days who have been inactive for 3 consecutive days. And of course, you can change this to be really any metric that you want, depending on the application and how you might want to use it. In this one, this is instructor engagement stats by course. If you are using instructors or facilitators for your courses, you need to know that they have stuff, that they have activities and assignments and forums inside of their courses to create an engaging environment. And this instructor engagement stats by course is one very lovely way to be able to grab that information that's sitting in the gold mine of your learning management system, right? This is the data you need. This is what makes online learning and learning in general so entirely wonderful. And so you need to be able to access that data and use it to your advantage to create fabulous learning experiences. All righty. So let's repeat, rewind, friends. This is where we've been. We talked about positioning to your audience and the identifying the big idea, right? We need to identify the big idea. Positioning to your audience is all about understanding who your audience is and what they will actually care about. We talked about the ethics of data presentations and being very cautious in how you're showing that data. We talked about displaying data effectively, which is really important because this is how you don't lose your audience, right? If I just show you the chart and it's really tiny on your screen, it's not helping anyone. And then you have to go further by directing the vision to make sure that whoever is following along with you in your audience, they are actually following along with you, right? And then we did storytelling in action. Here is a list of our resources for this particular presentation. I would love to have more conversations with you about it, as well as IntelliBoard. Please feel free to reach out to me. My email is tonya@intelliboard.net, and maybe I can put that into the chat. I hope that I can. Let's see. Yes, I can. I will type that into the chat. There we go. So thanks, everybody.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you. A lot of interesting stuff there, and there are a few minutes if people have questions, comments, other things that you want to talk about.
And I would love that if anybody does have questions or comments, they would be warmly welcome.
Yeah, well, on the IntelliBoard product itself, so we saw the sort of, the progress. What is that working with? Like what kinds of courses, what is it connecting to? I imagine some people aren't going to ask that question.
It connects to your learning management system.
Okay.
So it's pulling and extracting the data that is sitting there because the learning management system is obviously very critical in the learning environment. And we know that very well after March of 2020. And so because of that, right, not all of them have the same level of robust nature in terms of their reporting, or they are focused in one direction or another with the reporting. And that's all IntelliBoard does, is we are providing reporting for learning management systems.
Got it. So it works with pretty much any major LMS out there.
Any major LMS, yes. And our next iteration, which coincidentally is called IntelliBoard Next. So our next IntelliBoard iteration is going to be we're focused on doing metadata and mapping data tables so that we can dump multiple different sources of data. So a good example of this might be the learning management system and the student information system data, or specific tools that folks might be using, and they want to be able to pull from both of those sources in their reporting. And we're super, super excited to talk to everyone about that because it is super cool.
Oh, it sounds great. One last question just about audience. The example that you gave was, I think, university courses, university college. But is there a fit with corporate learning as
Absolutely.
well?
Absolutely. I'll just throw it out there that two of our largest customers are IBM and SAS. And we have many, about half of our base is corporate. And so we are using, especially for folks who are interested in selling courses, folks who are managing courses that are mandatory from a compliance perspective. So anything like that at all. Yeah. So we have a ton of corporate clients.
Great. Oh, that sounds great. I guess the last question, because we're an international conference, do you also have an international audience, or would you want an international audience?
We are global. We are in, I think, I want to say 10 languages. We are in simplified Chinese. We are in Japanese. We are in most of the European languages. We are Arabic, Portuguese, both, I think, both flavors of Portuguese. We got you covered, pretty much. We got you covered. Yeah. And we have representatives all over the globe.
Wow. So it sounds. All right. Well, there's a lot there and a lot to experiment with. Maybe another shot at any last minute questions before we wrap up for the session. And I think then just about on time. So Tonya, thank you so much. It's really just a pleasure to listen to this, and could have a whole separate longer conversation about manipulating people with data, which would probably take another several hours.
No, we could spend hours on that particular topic. Yes, we could, for sure, for sure.
Refrain from getting into that now with the time that we have left and focused on the product, but love to talk about that more at another time. Thank you once again. It's great having you here, and hope to see you through some of the other sessions as well. And everyone else, 3:30 is coming up. We've got parallel sessions going on, so we'll see you back there. Tonya,
thank you so much, everybody. It was a pleasure.
You too. Take care.